Have you ever wondered how the rise of China as a global superpower might be subtly shaping the media we consume in the West? The answer to question might be more complex and significant than one might initially think. Take, for instance, the case of Hollywood, a titan of the global film industry. In recent years, the Chinese box office has been a goldmine for Hollywood studios. China has become the world's second-largest movie market, and this has inevitably led to a shift in how films are produced and marketed. As studios seek to tap into this lucrative market, they sometimes alter their content to align with Chinese cultural nuances and governmental regulations. In the wake of China's rise, Hollywood's financial dependence on the East has grown significantly. Not only has the Chinese box office become a major revenue source, but Chinese companies have also been investing heavily in Hollywood studios. This influx of financing has begun to shape Hollywood's decision-making. For instance, scenes that might be deemed politically sensitive or controversial to China are often edited out or altered to ensure the film can be released in the Chinese market. A significant example of this is the Marvel film, Doctor Strange, where a Tibetan character was recast to avoid political sensitivities. This financial dependence has a profound impact on the films that Hollywood produces, subtly influencing the narratives we see on our screens. Let's delve deeper into how Hollywood alters its content to appease Chinese censors. Take the remake of Red Dawn, for instance. Originally, the film featured Chinese invaders, but they were digitally altered to North Koreans in post-production, a change made to avoid upsetting the Chinese government. Then there was the live-action Mulan. This Disney film faced backlash for filming in Xinjiang, a region associated with human rights abuses, and for thanking government bodies associated with these abuses in its credits. Despite Disney's claims of promoting diversity and inclusivity, this decision was seen by many as a clear concession to Chinese interests. And it's not just the big, obvious changes. There are subtle examples too. In some films, references to US politics are carefully worded or entirely removed to prevent causing offense. These examples highlight the extent to which Hollywood is willing to go to maintain access to the Chinese market, even if it means compromising the integrity of their stories and the values they espouse. Digging deeper into this topic, we find numerous instances where Hollywood has gone to great lengths to censor political and moral ideas that may not align with the Chinese government's viewpoint. It's not just about changing the nationality of the villains or removing politically sensitive themes. It's about altering moral ideas that contradict Chinese societal norms. Take, for instance, the film Brokeback Mountain. Despite its critical acclaim, it was never released in China due to its depiction of a homosexual relationship, a topic considered taboo by the Chinese censors. Similarly, Avatar, while a box office success worldwide, had scenes removed in China due to its perceived subversive political themes. And who can forget the ordeal of 7 years in Tibet? The film was not only banned in China, its star Brad Pitt was reportedly banned from entering the country for years. To understand Hollywood's careful navigation of Chinese censorship, it's essential to know why certain themes are offensive to China. The first and foremost being China's sensitivity to any mention of Taiwan or Tibet as separate entities, which is viewed as a direct challenge to China's sovereignty. You'd remember how the film Kundun was banned due to its portrayal of the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan struggle for independence. Next, we see the Chinese government's aversion to liberal or anti-government ideas. Any film that portrays rebellion against authority or champions a liberal cause seen as subversive. V for Vendetta, a film that revolves around a masked vigilante fighting a fascist government, was unsurprisingly banned in China. Lastly, anything that challenges the moral philosophy endorsed by the Chinese government tends to be censored. The Dark Knight, while a pop culture phenomenon worldwide, was criticized in China for its perceived promotion of chaos and anarchy. Despite the growing influence of China on Hollywood, there has been opposition from within the industry. Renowned filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino and actors such as Richard Gere have been vocal about their criticisms. Tarantino, known for his unfiltered artistic expression, refused to edit his film Django Unchained for the Chinese market. Gere, a longtime supporter of Tibetan independence, has openly criticized China's policies, leading to his films being effectively banned in the country. However, the financial pressure and threats from Chinese authorities have led many of these dissenting voices to eventually yield. Tarantino ultimately agreed to make changes to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for release in China. Gere has admitted that his stance on Tibet has cost him major roles in Hollywood blockbusters, This surrender to Chinese censorship has significant implications for the industry's future. It not only limits the creative freedom of filmmakers, but also sets a precedent for the acceptance of external political influence in content creation. These examples highlight the struggle within the industry and the difficult choices that have to be made in the face of financial pressure and threats. It's a complex issue, one that poses a major challenge to the balance between artistic integrity and commercial success. China's influence extends beyond the silver screen, permeating various forms of media and entertainment. Western news outlets, for instance, have been accused of softening their coverage of China due to commercial interests. Some critics argue that this compromises the media's responsibility to provide unbiased reporting. Voiceover. This influence has been subtly woven into the fabric of Western news outlets, often through Chinese government-affiliated companies acquiring stakes in these media entities. The impact of these acquisitions can be seen in the subtle shift in news reporting. There's a discernible lean towards portraying China in a more positive, or at least neutral light. When compared to the time before Chinese influence, the difference in reporting is both intriguing and concerning. The purpose behind this influence is twofold: to shape public opinion and to promote China's global image. By having a hand in the news that Western audiences consume, these Chinese entities can subtly steer public perception in their favor. This influence, however, has significant implications for the objectivity and integrity of Western news. It raises questions about the media's ability to remain impartial, especially when reporting on sensitive issues related to China. In the world of sports, the National Basketball Association, NBA, experienced a significant backlash from China when a team manager tweeted in support of the Hong Kong protests in 2019. The incident highlighted the fine line that Western organizations must tread in order to maintain access to the lucrative Chinese market. Interestingly, while these news outlets are subtly influenced by China, they continue to assert that they represent the views and best interests of the American people. We see these Western news outlets waving flags and claiming to represent American interests. But behind the scenes, there's a different story. There have been instances where news stories were distorted or even fabricated to appear in China's favor. For instance, the 2019 Hong Kong protests were reported as riots by some American media, underplaying the democratic aspirations of the protesters. There have been similar distortions regarding the Uyghur crisis, with reports downplaying the scale and severity of human rights abuses. Domestically, the NBA's controversy involving China was underreported in certain news outlets due to the economic implications. These are just a few examples of how the influence of China has led to the suppression and distortion of news, both foreign and domestic. In the midst of China's growing influence, there have been instances where voices critical of China have been silenced or even punished in the US. This threat to free speech isn't just limited to mainstream media. It has seeped into numerous sectors, including academic spaces. Take the case of American universities. Here, there have been alarming reports of anti-China sentiments being systematically suppressed. And why? To maintain a favorable relationship with Chinese partner institutions and students. Let's delve deeper into this. American universities have welcomed thousands of Chinese students every year, with their significant contributions to the university's coffers being a major factor. Simultaneously, collaborations with Chinese partner institutions have been fruitful from a research perspective. In this context, upsetting China could lead to a significant loss for these universities. For instance, consider the case of the University of Maryland, where a Chinese student's commencement speech praising free speech in the United States led to an uproar. The student faced severe backlash from Chinese online communities, and the university was pulled into the controversy, risking their relationship with China. Similarly, in 2018, the University of North Texas cut ties with the Confucius Institute, a Chinese government-funded educational institution, after receiving criticism over concerns of academic freedom. This capitulation, however, raises serious questions about academic integrity and freedom. Universities are traditionally arenas for free thought, open dialogue and debate, but by suppressing anti-China sentiments, these institutions are essentially curbing these very principles. This is where we see the invisible hand of China reaching into the very heart of America's democratic values. The freedom to criticize, to question, to hold accountable. These are the principles that America stands on. But with China's growing influence, these principles are being tested. The most worrying aspect of China's influence is arguably its impact on politics. It's an open secret that the Chinese government and state-run companies have financed both sides of recent US elections. This isn't about favoring one party over the other, but rather it's about ensuring favorable policies towards China from whichever party is in power. Chinese lobbying efforts are not just limited to financial contributions. They extend to influencing policy decisions, swaying public opinion, and even shaping the narrative around China in the American political landscape. The stances of both major parties on issues concerning China have been noticeably affected by these efforts. Consider the case of the Trump administration's tariffs on Chinese goods. While the move was touted as a measure to protect American, it also reflected the growing concern within the US about China's economic influence. However, the lobbying efforts by Chinese entities played a significant role in diluting the tariff measures and even influencing public opinion about them. Similarly, China's influence is evident in the US's approach to the South China Sea dispute. Despite international condemnation of China's aggressive territorial claims, the US has maintained a relatively subdued stance, indicative of China's sway over American foreign policy. Interestingly, both Trump supporters and many liberals outwardly claim a critical stance towards China, while supporting views and decisions beneficial to the Chinese government. This paradoxical stance is particularly evident when examining the political landscape. Both sides of the aisle have been quick to accuse each other of being pro-China. Yet there is little in-depth investigation into these claims. The reason for this lack of scrutiny is potentially due to the risk it poses. If both parties are implicated in bending to China's will, it could result in a massive political scandal, leading to a loss of public trust and potential upheaval. Therefore, it is in the best interest of both parties to maintain the status quo, despite the accusations they hurl at each other. This paradox raises several questions about the sincerity of political rhetoric and the true motivations behind policy decisions. Are politicians genuinely concerned about China's influence, or is this just a convenient narrative to justify certain policy decisions? And more importantly, to what extent are these decisions influenced by China's lobbying efforts? The answers to these questions could potentially reshape our understanding of American politics and China's role in it. As we grapple with the paradoxical stance towards China, one might ask, so what is there to do in the face of China's growing influence on Western media and politics? It's a complex issue with no easy answers. Yet, there are a few potential solutions that we could explore. First, we might consider increased transparency in media ownership. Knowing who owns and controls our sources of information is a crucial first step in understanding potential biases. Stricter regulations on foreign influence in politics could also be beneficial, but the implementation of such measures is easier said than done. Secondly, we must acknowledge the complexity of the relationship between China and the West is not simply a matter of good versus evil, but a nuanced interaction of economic, political, and cultural forces. The answers are not straightforward, and it's important to approach the situation with an open mind. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, public awareness of China's subtle influence is critical. Particularly in complex economic and international political decisions, it's easy for the average person to overlook the subtle ways in which foreign powers can sway our perceptions and decisions. It's not enough to simply consume media. We must also question it, investigate it, and understand its context. The Chinese government may not be popular in the US, and it probably never will be. However, its subtle influence can still sway decisions, particularly complex economics and international political decisions that the public has little understanding of. The first step to countering this is awareness. It's a complex issue, and there's no easy answer at this point. But as consumers of media and participants in democracy, we must stay informed and vigilant. The power to change this situation lies not just with our politicians, but with us, the people.